Thank you folks for joining me on this Saturday here in August, and I start this with a um, actually it's a self-portrait of Pythagoras. Pythagoras, according to Albert Einstein and a few other people, was the smartest man ever to walk on our planet. Einstein said there was God and there was man, and in between was Pythagoras. What's interesting about this portrait that's here is the fact that if you look on the left-hand side, you'll see a picture of the globe, which is our Earth. And if you Pythagoras was born in 550 BC. It wasn't for another 1800 years before they realized, and actually 1900 years before they realized that the Earth was actually round. Pythagoras wrote that the Earth was not only round, but that it was spinning at a great deal of speed, and it also was he knew the exact distance from the Earth to the Moon. He had calculated that. He did a lot of work in that. He's also known by everyone as the father of modern geometry, but he's also the first man ever to use the square root of numbers. Now, what's important about this picture is if you look at the left hand of Pythagoras on the table there, you'll see the picture of the proportional divider, and which is basically the Masonic seal. That little tool that's right there next to the parchment, that's the seal that's on the Masonic emblem. He's holding a triangle in his left hand. He's pointing to, on his right hand, he's pointing to one on the parchment, and there's one directly above his head, which is very important, the one that has the little things that look like commas. I'll go into that a little bit later. If you also look at the left, you'll see a harpsichord there related to music. You'll see another proportional divider in the lower left-hand corner right here, and then you'll see the seraph tree, which is out of the Hebrew Bible. So what I start this is because I want to show you the symmetry in these triangles, because everything we're going to work toward is to try to make some money at this. I mean, it's all fun to study it, but you have to be pragmatic about it. If you can't make a buck, move on to using the 50-day, 200-day cross of the moving average and the oscillator 1321 crossover, and I will go back to pharmacy school before I ever do that. My background basically is I have a pharmacy degree and MBA in finance from Indiana, and I traded for 10 years while I was working for Eli Lilly. In 1976, I ran the commodity department for Drexel Burnham Lambert in Beverly Hills in the Milken building. In 1982, I became a floor trader at Chicago Mercantile Exchange, where I traded my own account for 3 years until 1985, when I went to work for Commodity Corporation in Princeton, New Jersey, which was a pretty prestigious think tank founded partially by Amos Hofstadter, who trained more of the market wizards than anyone else. I stayed there for a couple of years, and I went out on my own. Goldman Sachs bought them out, I believe, in 1995. And it's been pretty much of a seclusion, secret organization since that time. I believe this is where their proprietary programs come from, because they have all the material and the brains to make really sophisticated trading models. So we'll see what happens. The journey that I took through here is basically based on this particular diagram that you see from our cosmos. This is what our Milky Way looks like, and you'll see that it's formed in this spiral formation, and that's what we'll be talking about quite a bit during the day, and try to take you from the transition from the semi-occult astrology to in astronomy until we get to some of these patterns that we look at. When you're looking at astrology or astronomy, you're basically starting with this spiral mirabilis, which is the Fibonacci spiral. When you're looking at this, this is nothing more than the expansion or contraction of every living thing in the universe. And since our markets are living things, they work off of these numbers quite well. This particular diagram was so important to Isaac Newton that he had it engraved on the headboard of his bed. If you're ever over in the UK and go to the Isaac Newton home, you'll be able to see it, and it's really quite amazing. He has some formulas along with it, but this is the primary diagram that is on the bed itself. when we're talking about our planetary system, we're talking, I'm going to try to take you from astronomy to astrology and show you what the difference is. The difference between astronomy and astrology: astronomy is the study of the planetary formations. Astrology is the interpretation of the study of the planetary formations. And all of these things are working in perfect harmony, as you can see, as they go through this spiral movement of all the planets. There's all the planets from Mercury, Venus, Mars, Saturn, Jupiter. They're all there, and this is what they look like when they go into move into the other galaxy, and they die, they go into the black hole. It's all spiral. Everything is related to numbers. So all the things that we're going to be talking about here, you don't have to be afraid of them, because they're nothing more than numbers. This is primarily what you're looking at when you're looking at the universe as it relates to numbers. This is a two aspects coming together is what they call a planet kiss. In other words, when the planet Mercury comes together, with the planet Venus, it tells you that you're within so many days of a cycle. And these things are so accurate that they're within, seconds, because the tidal tail, the Astronomical Society gives the U.S. navies all over the world what the tidal forces are, so they know when the water moves back and forth, and to tell you how the ships can go in and out. Well, if you stop and think, our bodies are over 85% water, and with the tidal effect of the moon, the gravitational effect of the moon, that does affect behavior, because our bodies are nothing more than just water and chemicals, and that's pretty much what we are. Now, the thing is that the moon is not actually a planet. It's a satellite of the Earth. The planets start with the planet Mercury. So if you look at the gravitational pull of Mercury and Venus and Mars and add those cycles together, that's what gives you to that point. How I got to these cycles, I'll go into a little bit, but in a one hour or so talk, there's really not any way that I can show you everything that I've learned, but I'll give you an idea of the search that I went through. The next one that we look at here is one of my very favorites. Now, this one happens to be the Mercury and Venus cycle, and as you can see, when it starts out, it just keeps repeating and repeating and repeating until it gets to this point where it goes into infinity, and everything goes into infinity. And this is where we come to the Fibonacci summation series when we're dealing with planetary things. Now, Fibonacci, who was a 13th century mathematician and accountant who worked for the royal family in Pisa, he went to Egypt, and he found that if you took the base of the pyramid and divided by the height, it came out to 0.618. Well, he spent a whole year studying that particular phenomenon and all the angles of the secret passages and all the other things that happened to be there. And when he came back, he wrote a paper called Liber Abaci, which basically said freedom from numbers. I believe that was published in 1232 AD, and he received the accolades of the Nobel Peace Prize, or any of the highest awards that he could get all over Europe were accoladed on him because of what he had done. And basically what he did was he realized that the pyramid had nothing more than a sequence of zeros and ones. In other words, if you had 0 and 1 together, you get 1. 1 and 1 you get 2, and 1 and 2 you get 3. And if you go all the way down, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34, 55, 89 to infinity. But once you get down to the 8th harmonic, where you divide 121 divided by 34, that gives you 0.618. Well, what happens is this is either a higher or lower number every time: 6182, 6180, 6181. So that basically means that if you take any two numbers in nature, you can take the number 572 and another number 3,455, and you add one to the other, by the time you get to the 8th iteration, to this level right here, that number will always come out to 0.6187, and it'll stay in infinity forever. So that means within numbers, even though they are chaotic, you come up with a non-random number. And this is what we're trying to do as traders. We're trying to take a market that looks chaotic, but in fact is not, and that's what gives you the beauty of what you're trying to find, and that is these particular patterns that we look at. Because as a pattern trader, we're looking for something like a low to a high to a low, or midway through the high to the low. We're trying to find a pattern that will fit based on these numbers of the Fibonacci summation series, which helps us, you know, with our analysis of everything that we have. Now, one of the things that we're going to show here, since you can't come into my office here, I work on two 42-inch monitors. I want to show you my monitor a little bit later, and you'll get an idea of what I look at during the day. We go to the next one. Oh my gosh, there is my monitor. Now this is the secret of trading, folks. I know you think it's a little obscure that this is what my monitor looks like, but the secret of trading is learning how to control risk. And nowhere on this slot machine does it tell you that I've taken in $1.2 million more than I've given out, and nowhere does it say you have no chance of beating me over the longer term. All it does is it shows flashing lights of all the things you can win with the 3 sevens or the 3 diamonds and the 4,000 coins. So to be a professional trader, to be any kind of trader, you must think like the slot machine. And the slot machine thinks about how much I can lose. And that's what a winner thinks about, is how much I can lose. Winners think how much I can lose, because that's the only thing they can correct, is that they have any control over, is the fact of the amount of risk that they can take in the risk-reward occasion. No one can tell you what is going to happen next with 100% probability, and no one can tell you whether you're going to win or lose. Losers think how much I can win. So what they do is they go at these slot machines in Las Vegas, and they have all of these flashing lights about how much people can win. No one thinks about how much they can lose, and that's the difference between a really good trader and a loser, basically, because the losers think how much they're going to win. Stockbrokers call people up, say, let's buy this stock. It's going to go from 8 to 400, and you want the stockbroker that calls up and says, look, we can buy this stock at 8, and if it goes to 7, we can get out of it, because that's the man who's protecting yourself. And that's what we're really trying to do as a trader. And some of these things I'll cover at the very end to give you an idea. Now, my whole thing started with stock market prediction back in the early 80s. One of my professors, Dr. Miller from University of Indiana, got me started in a book by Donald Bradley. And Bradley's book led me to another book by H.M. Gartley called Profits in the Stock Market. This is one of the figures out of the book. The book was written in 1937, and it cost $1,500, which was the depths of the Depression. That was basically the cost of 3 Ford automobiles. But in this book, diagrams, pages like this, long before Elliott Wave came out, Charles Collins did not start to promote Ralph Elliott until late 1938, and this book was written, published in 1937, so the works were out there long before. But what Gartley was showing here, that the market was composed of many swings, and he looked at all the swings in this particular case from 1919 to 1935, and he measured them, and he did not use the Fibonacci ratios, but he was using percent of a particular move. In other words, 10% of a move, 12% of a move, 3.5% of the move, but it was the basic of how the market actually moves. I'm not an Elliott Wave person, because I believe if you get 3 Elliott Wave people in the room, you're going to get 9 different answers, because each of them have 2 alternates. When we're finished here, you won't have to worry about alternates. That's either right or wrong. We're going to take our assumption that our pattern is correct. We're going to try to be right 7 out of 10 times, and that's really what we're trying to do.